Our museum opened in 2008. I actually started working for the museum in 2007 before we had a museum. I worked from home trying to raise awareness of why we needed a museum, and we already had this building, so it's been a work in progress. And the other day, I guess the first of the year, I realized I'd been doing this for 10 years, which can't believe it's been 10 years. It just seems like just yesterday. Time's really gone by fast. But it's my dream job. I enjoy the history of Minden and Webster Parish. I enjoy talking to the people. I enjoy researching it and finding out about it. And I just enjoy all the people that I've gotten to meet. It's just been a thrill for me, and I really do enjoy it. And I hope y'all enjoy it. Before you leave, I hope you walk through the museum just a little bit and see what we have. It is a work in progress. I met R.O. years ago. He and I both have a love for cars. Of course, he likes Fords, and I never did understand that, but...
I couldn't understand you more than GM either.
I know. I was more of a Buick kind of girl. So, but we've gone through a lot of car shows together, a couple of loans together. Those were kind of sketchy. He wasn't sure about loaning me money, but he did.
That's not true.
Gotten a lot of cookbook recipes from him, and gosh, I don't even know how long we've known each other, for many, many years.
I'm a lot older than you are, but
well, I know, but I want to thank all the bank folks that are here tonight for coming out to hear R.O. And we have someone that really wanted to introduce you, R.O., so I'm going to let him come up and introduce you right now, and I'm not promising anything.
Now, I'll tell y'all from the outset, most everything I'm going to tell you tonight is true. But everything he tells you is going to be a lie.
Oh, I was about to say you just need to drink a lot of wine, because he wasn't a ball of fire in the classroom, and he may not be tonight. But I did. It was my second year here in Minden, and of course, at this point of the game, if you graduated from Minden, I probably taught you, or was your counselor or something, because Saturday I was 85, and my second year in Minden, I had R.O. in my civics class, and I just wanted to tell you all this, that I at about that time I got a camera. What was the kind the first one that took pictures? Polaroid. Had a Polaroid camera. And I was just taking some pictures of my class while they were taking the test. I wish you could see one of them. This will tell you a lot about R.O. you probably don't want to know. Mike Kennan is sitting on the right. One of the smartest kids in this class is sitting on his left. Where is R.O. looking during the test? He's looking at Mike Kennan. I got a picture of him.
That's the reason why I almost failed your class.
Anyway, he's still one of my favorite people. His dad hired me to start teaching in Webster Parish, and I've appreciated that all these years, and also the friendship of R.O. Absolutely. Just want to say that he has been, is, and still is one of my favorites, R O Machen.
Thank you, Carlton. It's been a real ride with you. I'm here to talk about the Machens, but I got to tell you this story first. And I don't have but 30 minutes to give you 342 years worth of Machens, so we're going to have to take a few minutes. I was in his civics class, and I was fishing Caney Lake a lot. I enjoyed that. And I said something one day in class about, I wish I knew where the channel was in Caney Lake. Carlton says, you can see it from there. He was in the Air National Guard. He'd served, and thank you for your service. but he had served, and he said, I've got to go up Saturday and do some flying to keep my time up. He said, you won't go with me? Well, I thought about that, and I finally said, yeah, I'll go with you. So I climbed in the plane with him. That's the first mistake I made. I climbed in the plane with him. We flew over Caney Lake, because you come off the end of the runway and you go right over Caney. Sure enough, there's a channel. Comes around by the bank and comes around by, and I had my map of the lake, and I was drawing it like that, and he says, oh, you can't see, can you? Just like that. Wasn't nothing between me and the lake but that door, and I don't know if it was locked or not. When I finally came to, I was sitting on top of him looking down. So he got us straightened out. We flew around several times, and I got my map drawn. He said, you through? I said, yeah, I got it, man. I appreciate this. I'm ready to go back now. He said, well, I got to do a couple of maneuvers while I'm up here, because that's why I'm up here in the first place. He said, it won't take but a few minutes. I said, well, okay. So we did a couple of maneuvers. It wasn't too bad. And then he said, now we're going to do a controlled stall. I said, take me back and let me out. And then he said, Gary Daniels will know what I'm talking about. He eased that plane up and kept trimming the power, and just like that. Well, Mother washed that night. But that's a true story. And as I said, you'll get to hear Carlton, and a lot of what I'm going to tell you is a whole lot truer than what he's going to tell you. First things first, thank you to Shelly. She's been at it a long time, along with the ladies, along with a lot of people that have kept the museum alive and going. We appreciate what you all do. And if you haven't tried to help them, please do. They need all the help. You heard the budget cuts, so has everybody else got budget cuts in Louisiana. But at any rate, we need to keep the museum going. It's a wonderful place. I'm thankful that they have some of my cattle artifacts, and they've used them. We have pictures that our family has given them, and it's a great thing. And they've worked hard to keep this thing going through sometimes not so good times, and we appreciate all you do. And Shelley and I have enjoyed a lot of car shows together. She always beat me with that old Cadillac she had, but that's all right too. I got a watch here. I've got 342 years of Machens, and I got 30 minutes to tell you about them. So we'll start. It all began, Larry Milford too. I forgot Larry. Larry's done a tremendous job here. And if you all haven't seen the museum, please look at it. 342 years of Machen. It starts with Thomas Machen, who was born in 1675 in Virginia. He was married to Mary Chelton, and their son was Henry Sr., who lived and died in Virginia. He was married to Frances Ballinger, and their son was Francis Ballinger Machen. Now, these are all my grandfathers. And he died in 1860 in Alabama. Their son was Henry W., born in South Carolina. He died in Alabama. And then there was Francis Marion Machen, who was born of that union in Alabama and died in Louisiana. That's my great-grandfather. He's buried at Bolton Teagle Cemetery at Winfield. But I want to really start with my grandfather, Henry Wadsworth Machen. That's my daddy's daddy. H.W. Machen was born in 1866, and he died in Winfield in 1915. He's also buried in the Bolton Teagle Cemetery there at Winfield. Henry H.W. married Luella Little. And I said Martin, and what Shelley didn't tell you, Charlotte and I are going to do the Martins in May. So if you want to kind of check up on some of the stuff I'm going to tell you, we'll come back in May, and Charlotte and I are going to talk about the Martins of Evergreen. But H.W. married Luella Little. Her family of the Littles was from Cooley. That's a little community kind of like Evergreen between Winfield and Clarence. And most of her relatives are buried at the United Methodist Church there at Cooley. It's about halfway between Winfield and Clarence. Grandpa was a logger by trade, and he had logged all over the area around Winfield. There were 5 children born of that union. Clarence Alvis died about a year old. He was dropped, a maid dropped him, and he died from those injuries. And then Nancy, some of these youngsters back. If you're related to me, stand up. Y'all stand up. That's not all of them. We've been prolific. We're trying to keep the Machen's name going. But Clarence Alvis died. That left Lucille, the only girl, and then Daddy, Robert Odell, Thomas Olin, and Horace Omer. Horace Omer was the oldest of the group. If you'll notice, all of them had middle initial O's in their name. But they all lived in Winfield. Grandpa died in a logging accident in 1915. They cut a tree down and it fell into a dead tree, and that fell on him and it killed him. Grandma Machen then had 4 children to raise. So she moved to Springhill with her family, and she bought a boarding house in Springhill. Wilford Taylor and Conetta get the long distance, so they're from Benton, Arkansas, and they came tonight just to hear me. But Granny moved her family to Spring Hill. She bought a boarding house from her brother, William Enoch Little. Bill Little then moved to Minden and opened a barbershop where Gray's Jewelry is now, and ran that barbershop for years and years. Doc McIntyre, gosh, all of the older barbers around here cut hair for Uncle Bill. And we used to come down here. That's where I got my haircut. We'd come on Saturday and we'd get a haircut. But she bought the boarding house from Uncle Bill, and she ran it mostly men that worked at the sawmill and worked in the logging industry were ones that she roomed and boarded up there. And she also did their washing. She also had cafeteria. Some of the pictures that are up here on the counter, you can see pictures of the cafeteria that she had, and some other pictures there of the things that she did. Let me kind of catch up on where I am. Lucille was the daughter. Lucille graduated from Minden High School in 1925. She went to Miss Lynn's business school. I don't know where this Miss Lynn was any kin to Mr. Lynn or not, but that's where she went to school, and she met a man by the name of Jack Cummins in Shreveport, and they married. She died in 1939, and Jack died a couple of years later. She had pneumonia, and so did he. And they had no children in that union. She ran the boarding house and several cafes. Horace Omer, a lot of people called him Homer, was the oldest of the boys. He was born in 1896 and died in 1969. He married Mamie Parker Machen. Mamie Parker, the Parker family was out towards Bossier Parish, and they had a daughter, Martha Jane Horn, Martha Jane Machen Horn. She married Jack Horn. And Martha Jane was to be here tonight, but she fell last week and broke her hip, so she's in rehab now. And I hate that, because Martha would have been, she would have enjoyed this, and I would have enjoyed having her. That's my first cousin and the only one I have, so we're praying that she's going to be okay, and she will be. The surgery was successful. He married Mamie Parker. They had Martha Horn. Jack Horn, her husband, was a driller. Jack Montgomery and I were just talking about that. Jack started out drilling in Saudi Arabia. He drilled in Libya. He drilled in the Somaliland, all of the places where we can't go now, and they try to kill us. But Jack drilled the first well in Saudi Arabia, produced 35,000 barrels a day. Tremendous well, and he drilled all over that country over there. They retired, and he moved back to Spring Hill, and they bought Ray's Jewelry on Main Street, which became Horn's Jewelry, and they were there for several years when they ran the store. Martha kept it a couple years after Jack died, and then she sold the store. Martha's got 2 children, Mark and Cindy. Mark's in Nashville, has played with Trace Atkins and other up there. He's played guitar with them. He found out he can make more money driving a tour bus than he could playing guitar, so he now drives for about 4 or 5 groups, drives their tour buses, and he goes all over the country with them. Cindy, the daughter, is a lawyer in New York City, and that's where Cindy needs to be, in New York City. And she'll stay there, so she's done well. Omer and Mamie ran the IP cafeteria at the paper mill for years and years. And they had a cafe and a bar downtown in Springhill after he retired from that. The only real memory I have of Omer is that I remember very definitely that he always had a Palomino horse. It was in behind where the telephone, across the street from where the telephone office used to be in Springhill. He never rode it, but he always had a Palomino. He loved them, and someone rode it in the parades for him. Olin, Thomas Olin, our youngest son is named after him. Thomas Olin, Top, a lot of people called him Top. He was born in 1899, died in 73. He married Corinne Reynolds from Stamps, Arkansas. They had no children. He was my second father. When I got in trouble, I called Olin, and Olin called Daddy. Made Daddy mad, but I was a whole lot better off by him Olin talking to him than me. He had the Magnolia, first the Texaco and then the Magnolia distributorship in Spring Hill. He was an agent. He was not a consignee. He was an agent, which meant that he could buy the product from Magnolia and sell it for what he wanted to or whatever he could get. A consignee, Magnolia put the product there, and then they had a price that they sold for. So Olin did well with that. He was in the banking business for a number of years and was very successful in that. Helped form the Citizens Bank in Spring Hill and was on the board there for a while. Now, that brings us to Daddy. Daddy was born in 1904 in Wynn Parish. When the family came to Spring Hill, he came with them. He graduated from Springhill High School. If I get kind of short of air, y'all forgive me. But he graduated from Springhill High School and went on to LSU. He graduated from LSU in 1927. He and John T. Campbell rode the same train to Webster Parish from LSU. John T. set up here in Minden he hung his shingle out. Daddy went on to Spring Hill and went to work for the Webster Parish School Board at Evergreen. He was a teacher there, and that's where he met Mother. Now, the Martins were, of course, from Evergreen. It kind of gets interesting from there. Mama was a senior, I believe, a junior or a senior. I believe she was a senior whenever Daddy came there. They started dating, and at that time, the school board frowned on that, just as they do now. But they dated. And all of a sudden, Daddy moves to Weston out of Jonesboro Hodge as principal. He was at Evergreen about 2 years, and then he moved down there to Weston. He taught there about 2 years as principal. Then he came back to Darlene. At Weston, and I need to stop and tell you this, I had a couple of men come to me at Daddy's funeral and said, your daddy was a blessing to us at Weston. Said, we'd never been out of Weston, except maybe to go to Jonesboro Hodge. So he carried us to a basketball game at LSU one time, and he said he had to buy us all shoes and clothes because none of us had any shoes or clothes. So he said we always appreciated him, and I appreciated him coming to me and telling me that, because he did help a lot of folks in that way. But anyway, he moved to Weston. He was there a couple of years. Then he came to Darlene in 1932, and guess what? Mama was with him. They married in 1930. Now, from the time he left Evergreen until Darlene, I don't know what happened. Grandpa Martin, Aunt Emma, one of Mama's old maid sisters that lived there at Evergreen on the place where we live, she got her a boyfriend, and Grandpa Martin ran him off. Now, I don't know if Grandpa Martin ran Daddy off, or I don't know if the school board ran him off. But anyway, he left Evergreen, and he showed up at Darlene in 1932 as principal, and Mother's with him. They moved in on a couple of years later to Cotton Valley, where he was principal, and that's where my sister Ann was born. Ann was 6 years older than I was. We fought most of the time because she didn't do what I wanted to, and she couldn't control me, or at least I thought she could. But we fought most of the time. But Ann and her family, she married Tyne Harrison from Springhill, a great guy. And Ann, we lost Ann in 2006 to a cerebral hemorrhage. Excuse me. Her daughters live, one of them lives in Arcadia, Kim, and pretty well sees about Tyne. Tyne's in assisted living in Arcadia, has Alzheimer's, a horrible disease. And the other daughter lives in Oklahoma City. But Ann and Tyne were great people, and Ann worked at Cedar Creek School as secretary for years and years over there. Well, let's get back to Daddy. She was born in Cotton Valley. We moved to Springhill, and that's where I was born. Old Dr. Gray delivered me in Springhill. Daddy was principal of Springhill High School. That was when the old high school was where the new school is now. There was two-story buildings and a single-story building there, and that was the Springhill school plant. They built a new school across the road, and now they've come back to where the old school was and built a new school and torn the one down that Daddy was principal in. He was there for a number of years. We moved to Minden in 1952. But when we moved up there, as I said, I was born when we were there. I had a complex all my life because the day that I was born, Daddy was in his office and couldn't be down there with Mother. So they called him and told him that I'd been born. Before he came to see me, he stopped at the sugar rationing place and got him a new sugar book because Daddy loved sweets, and at that time sugar was rationed. So I always told him, I said, you cared more about a sugar book than you did your own son. We've had a good life about that. We moved to Minden in 1952. There's a lot of, I've got a lot to go, and there's a lot of memories in Springhill. And I'll stop and tell you a story about Matt Garrett. And if y'all tell Patricia Powell about this, she'll have me arrested, so don't tell her. Matt Garrett, Horace Milliken, Rex and Robin Bryan, Bang Slack, we all, Mark and Susan Anthony, we all lived in that block where the Methodist Church was. And there was an alley that ran through there. Mac always wanted to preach. Even in those early days, we were probably about 10 years old, and he wanted to preach a funeral. So we didn't have anything to have a funeral over, so in the back of Brother Body's, who was the pastor at that time, in the back of his house was a plum orchard, and all the kids got sick off of them when they were green, and then all the ladies came in and made plum jelly and that type of thing when they got ripe. But Mac wanted to preach, and we all decided in the community around there that we were going to help him. So we all climbed up, or at least Mac and Horace Milliken climbed up, and we handed them a big rock, two of us handed it up there, and they got them, and we enticed one of the neighborhood cats to come under there, and the rock fell, and then we had us a victim, so Mac could preach his funeral. Well, Horace Milliken was the undertaker, and Horace still works for Bailey Funeral Home today, off and on. That's true. And so Mac got to preach his funeral. Mark Anthony and Susan and I sang, and Rex and Robin Bryan were the ushers. We had a real funeral there in the plum orchard, and Mac was satisfied that he had finally gotten to preach a funeral. One of the things in the golf club is over here, Springhill Golf Club. Daddy got a set of golf clubs, and it was off limits to me, very definitely off limits to me. I wasn't to touch them. So one day, Mark and Susan Anthony, that's Clary Anthony Sawmill fame, forestry products. Susan and Mark came in the house. We were going to get some water or something we were playing, and they saw the golf club, so we got a golf club out, and we drew straws to see who was going to tee off first. Well, I won because I was holding the straw. So I got behind the house and set up to tee. Mark and Susan, our backyard was a long backyard, went up the hill to an alley. So I set up to tee. Mark and Susan went up the top of the hill to catch the ball and bring it back, and then it would be their turn. Well, I teed off, And Susan went down, hit her right between the eyes. True story, knocked her out, cold. Martin was running down the alley screaming and hollering, I'd kill Susan. And at that time, most of the ladies didn't work. The women just poured out of the houses. There I was standing there with a golf club, trying to look innocent. And Susan got okay, it didn't hurt her, but I'll remember that to this day. And I saw Mark not too long ago, and he remembered it too. We had a great time up there in Springhill with all of the kids around there. And a lot of them, we meet up every now and then and reminisce about the times that we had. Let me tell you something about our family. We moved to Minden in 1952. I was going into the 5th grade. I loved to fish. When we drove up to our house, right across the street from the Lakeview Methodist Church, right there on the corner of Conview, we drove up in the driveway. Mom and Daddy went to the new house, and I went to Turner's Pond. It was a great place to fish. I caught a lot of fish out of there, and caught some good fish out of there. But we fished there. I fished Hinton's Pond. At that time, Country Club Circle wasn't there. Where Dr. Fleming's house is now, it used to be one of the best deep water brim beds along that bank you've ever seen. I caught many a bluegill along in there. There was a pond, the Smith Pond, out where 531 hits Highway 80 now. 531 wasn't there. And there was a gate there in that pasture where Hollingsworth Construction is. You could go over that hill and nobody could see your car. Well, I had a good friend that knew the Smiths and knew when they were out of town. There was a big pond down in the bottom, but the fish weren't any good there. The one up by the house was the one where the fish was. And I would slip in there and fish and catch a good mess of bluegills. And I got caught one time. My informant was wrong. And Mr. Smith ran me off and invited me not to come back. I did go back, but it was worth the risk because fishing was good there. I was doing a lot of that fishing 6-hour study hall. Miss Strother, who is now Miss Adcock, Miss Strother was 6-hour study hall, and I'd go in and sign up and I'd leave. As long as I brought her a mess of fish every now and then, well, I was good. But I fished on the 6th hour, and I didn't go to work until 4:30 that afternoon. And I'll back up and tell you that I began mowing yards when I was in Springhill, and that continued in Minden. Harry Campbell and Dorothy Campbell were one of my best customers. They were gone every summer, and I took care of their yard, watered and mowed and all of that. They paid me $5 a month to look after their yard, which was big money. We had several yards around Conview and in that area that I took care of. But I went to work when I was 13 for Coach Oliphant, Minden High School. Joe's daddy went to work for Coach Oliphant at Victor Park Swimming Pool. I was jerking soda there. I made ice cream and sold cookies and candies and Cokes and that type of thing. And I had worked there about 2 years, and Creighton McCrary came up one day and asked me if I wanted to go to work, and I told him yes. So I went to work for Creighton McCrary at McCrary's filling station. Worked there 9 years while I was in high school and college. We did a lot of business down there. And the first day I went to work for him, Creighton said, you and Brown, which was one of our hands, you and Brown go out such and such and get a car. Brown will drive the truck, you drive the lady's car back. I said, well, you want me to go do that? He said, yeah. I said, you know I don't have a driver's license. He said, what? I said, no. He said, you can't work at a filling station if you don't have a driver's license. I said, look, you asked me if I wanted to go to work. You didn't ask me if I had a driver's license. So I worked for Creighton for 4 months until I got to be 15 and I could get the driver's license. But I worked for Creighton all during that time. And during that time, it was an experience. I learned a lot about life. Warren Grigsby, Kenneth Martin, Doc McDade, Bernard Townsend. Some of y'all remember some of those names, but they were an education. I learned more than I should have. And part of the things that I found out about Daddy, Kenneth came in there one day and he said, is your mom at home? I said, yeah. it was about Christmas time. He opened the trunk of his deputy's car, and there was a case of early time half pints in there. He took one out and handed it to me. He said, give that to your mama so she can make eggnog at Christmas, which mother did. But that's the only time she allowed that in her house. But anyway, I took it home, and he says, Kenneth says, ask your daddy what he did during Prohibition. So I took the bottle home, and I gave it to Mother, and I promptly asked Dad, I said, Dad, what did you do during Prohibition? You've been talking to Kenneth Martin, hadn't you? I never did find out what Daddy did during Prohibition, but I have an idea, and I never did ask those questions. I should have. There was a lot of questions that I should have asked. In fact, some of the biggest regrets that I have are us not getting folks like John T. Campbell, Paul Castle, some of the bankers that were here. They knew everything about every family in Webster Parish, all of their legal ends, the religious ends, all that. We should have been taping them. And at the time that John T. was having his cancer treatments, you know, Miss Mary could have put a tape recorder in the seat, and all you had to do was punch John T. and he started talking. Yeah. And we missed that, and I regret that. We should have done that. My Aunt Winnie, Mother's other old maid sister, could name everybody's birthday, date they married, date they died, the whole works, and never, I didn't, and she came to our house, and I didn't record that, and we should have. So my hope is that maybe you all will, in your families, do that. We need to do that in our family, because it'll be lost if we don't, because some of the things that I really would like to know now about Daddy, everybody's gone that would have known what it was. So I miss that. Our children, Wes is the oldest son, works at the Camp Minden, been out there ever since he finished high school, about the only one left out there that knows where all the lines are. So I think they keep him around, and he would probably pay him to work out there so he could hunt. He's married to Sonia. Oldest daughter is Haley, softball catcher extraordinaire. She's courting a couple of colleges now, getting ready to go to college and on hopefully a softball scholarship. And they've lived in Doylean for a number of years now. Audra, sitting next to him, is a daughter. Les is her husband, right next to him. Jake, behind her, Jake Pooh, is a grandson. That's Audra's son. They are members of Evergreen Union Church. Jake is at Antioch, I think. But anyway, Jake works for the Office of Forestry. Les is Satyr Productions out of Shreveport. You see I'm all wired up here and rigged. If this thing interferes with my pacemaker, we all know what happened to me. But we're extremely proud of them and what they have done. When Barbara and I married, there were two children that came into the picture. Nancy, blonde in the back there. Nancy is married to Lance Thomas from Springhill. They live down the road from us. Two boys, Cade and Devin. Devin's one with the cap on over on the left over there. Cade's practicing baseball right now. So they have been active in Evergreen, especially in the baseball as the boys grew up. Suzanne is not here with her family. They live in Summerfield. Suzanne and Pat have 5 children. They have a pair of twins and 2 more daughters and 3 more daughters. So they made a substantial contribution to our grandchildren list on it. And then our youngest son, Olin, is back in the far corner back there. Olin's in the oil and gas business. Sherry just went out. She's hunting a boy that's coming from baseball practice. Tate is the little one back there in Glenbrook. So we're proud of our children. Wes didn't have any boys. He was the last Machen boy. He had 2 girls. And I really thought at that time that the Machen era had ended. But then along came Olin. Barbara and I decided after we were married a couple of years we wanted a child out of our marriage, so Olin was born. And now Olin has 2 boys, so we're another generation down the road, and it'll be up to Tate and Gage to carry the name on, and hopefully they will. That's something that I really do hope that that will happen, that they will carry the Machen name on. Let me kind of catch up here just a minute. I don't have much time left sitting up here.
You're good.
No, that's not what you told me.
I said, don't go an hour.
No, my voice won't hold out for an hour. I had a 52 Buick, green four-door. I think Mr. Prothrow, Carlton, was involved in this deal. Sammy Joe Oldham was a good friend of mine. That's Charlie Oldham's brother. Sammy Joe had a heart attack at his desk at Manning at the police jury office and died down there several years ago. Sammy Joe and I got to be good friends. I don't know why. He was a 250-pound fullback. I was 120-pound ringing wet. Wasn't worth nothing. And Daddy used to tell me, he says, you have no ambition whatsoever. You'll never amount to anything. What his problem was that he raised a redneck, and he couldn't understand that. Because Daddy was very proper. He dressed properly. He spoke properly. He went to meetings all over the United States in regard to school, and there I was. So anyway, I was there. But we had a, I forgot what I was talking about now. The Buick. I had 52 Buick. My Uncle Olin, who our oldest named after, bought it $400 from Sam Horn, which was Jack Horn's daddy. Didn't have many miles on it, and we rode all over everywhere with that Buick. And in those days, everybody knew you in Minden. I could race down the home road, and before I got home, Daddy was standing on the porch waiting on my keys. But and everybody looked after everybody's kids. That was just part of what we did. But Sammy Joe and I decided one day that it would be a good thing, and Martha was in there. Sammy Joe and I decided it would be a good thing if we tried to see how many girls we could get in that car. He was on the front seat and I was on the back. Back seat was like the couch in your living room. Front seat was almost as good. We put 21 young ladies in there with us. That was a lot of fun. Probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. But anyway, we had a great time that day, and I hate that Sammy Joe died, but we had a good time. Gene Durgee's not here tonight, but I apologized to Gene several times. Sammy Joe and I were in her first typing class, and she almost retired that year. Mr. Prothrow, we had Miss Foray, fourth hour, physics, top floor, opposite end from the dining hall. He would stand in the middle of the hall to catch us boys running down the hall. He'd help fold his arms up. Butch remembers this. And we'd sail off down there, and Wilford was our main. There's Gage. There's another grandbaby. Wilford would lead the pack, and I think you only got knocked down once, if I remember right.
Wilford was before me.
Oh, he was before you?
Yes.
No.
He just forgot me.
Yeah. You made a real impression on him, I'll tell you. Maybe it was Julius that
I remember,
I know. I'm telling y'all, just get ready, because you got to filter out what he's going to tell you. But we had a good time. That was at fourth hour during the lunch hour. As I said, I fished a lot of the ponds around. I used to ride with Kenneth Martin and Warren Griggs and that bunch at night. Daddy never really worried about me because I was riding with the deputy sheriff. I don't know if that's good or bad. He might have been worried, but anyway, we had a good time. Don Veach knew me personally by my first name. He should have. He stopped me enough. But, we had a lot of fun. When I would get in trouble, when I'd race up and down the road, the old Buick would run now. I got Johnny Lumerdina to shave the head on it one time, and the only gas you could burn in it was old purple Gulf Crest gasoline. I worked at McCreary Station. I got a little discount. I think it was 23 cents a gallon. But I burned that old Gulf Crest gas in it, and that old boy would run once you get it wound up. But if I acted up, when I drove up the driveway, Dad would be standing on the porch with his arms crossed. I'd walk by him, hand him my keys, and I'd go on in the house. And you didn't dare ask when you was going to get them back. Whenever he got ready for you to have them back, you'd get them back. I told you that I worked at McCreary's for 14 years. Creighton was still mad at me when I left because I had gypped him out of 4 months of work because I couldn't drive a car. I told you that Daddy had told me many a time I had no ambition, I'd never amount to anything, and yes, I was not excited about school. I enjoyed fishing more than I did school. Martha and Wilford and Julius. Who else was in the class of 60? Anybody else? Johnny, yeah. We were all in the class of 60, and we taught them some things when we were there. They thought they were teaching us, but I wish Sis was here tonight. But when I graduated from high school, walked across, Wayne Williams was the principal, Butch's dad. I walked across the platform up there and said, and Jimmy's dad, walked across the platform and he handed me the diploma and he pulled it back. When I reached for it, he said, if you'd have studied the first 2 years like you did the last two, you wouldn't be 144th in the class of 144. And I told him, I said, no, but I had a good time while we were there. I went on to Tech, graduated from Tech in accounting, went to work at Louisiana Bank in Shreveport. With the exception of the 2 years I was at Louisiana Bank in Shreveport, from 64 to about early 67, I've lived in Webster Parish all my life and thoroughly appreciated everything that the Webster Parish has done for me. Whenever People's Bank sold to Hibernia, I stayed for about 18 months, and then I went to work for Gibsland Bank, and that was an experience. I thoroughly enjoyed the Gibsland Bank experience. Greg is now out there at the Homer Road, but we had a good time. That was in the time when the government regulations were not quite as bad as what they are now. It's no fun now in the banking business. It's hard for them to help you do anything. We used to have some judgment that we were allowed in the loans that we made, and it's difficult to do that now. It's difficult for the bank to give the loan officers the authority to use their judgment to make the loans that they ought to make to help people. That was the greatest thing that I found in the banking business. That was the thing that I was really deeply appreciative of, was the fact that I could help people. And I really appreciated that opportunity to do that. I missed my friends, I missed my customers, and if you stayed with me long enough, we got to be friends, not just a customer. But I wouldn't care for it now. In fact,